Let me test the mic. Can someone confirm if they can hear me loud and clear?
Yes, you can. Good evening.
Okay. Good evening, Didi. That's fine. Yeah, it is 5 o'clock by my time. Good evening, citizens and students of the Electoral College, and welcome to today's class. Our topic today is democracy and citizens' participation. The whole of the work of the Electoral College is centered around democracy and citizens' participation. As students, you are exposed to the Constitution, the functionality of government, and its operation. All of this does not happen outside the citizen. That is why in today's class, we are going to deal with the subject matter of democracy and citizens' participation. Our facilitator is already in class. And so if you are curious about questions bordering on how you've got to participate as a citizen in your democracy and what are the elements of a functional democracy, then be rest assured that as you relax and listen attentively today, Mr. Tony Osidamen will clear your doubts on what you need to understand and know about citizens' participation in a functional democracy. And so without much time to waste, I want to believe that all of us in our pseudo political parties are signing in attendance as we join the call, your name and your political party, so your attendance is registered. I'll go ahead to read the profile of our facilitator for today, who is already in class, so we can begin in earnest.
Please, could you make him co-host? Sorry for interrupting. You have the host function. Yes. Could you make the facilitator co-host?
Okay,
so you could unmute and share. Yes, thank you.
Yes. All right. Just a minute, let me confirm this and then I will go straight. All right. Why is this so hard to find?
Okay, you no longer have the host function, so I don't think you can do that. I think Edie will just do that. Yes.
I was not checking through. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so you can just go ahead with this profile.
Okay. So, as I was saying, Tony Usidame is a renowned communications expert and social communicator. He is the founder of Uburu, a Nigerian-based marketing communication consultancy, providing services to individuals, businesses, and governments across West Africa. Tony is also an advocate of good governance and civic responsibility. He is the convener of I Am Edo, a movement of young Edo professionals which seeks to inspire pride and patriotism in all people of Edo heritage. Let me, with that profile, welcome Tony Usidame to today's class. So if you can hear me, the mic is yours, sir. Thank you.
I can hear you, Justin. Thank you very much. And good evening to everyone. Please, can you confirm that you can hear me very well? Can somebody confirm? Justin, Wumi?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Please, I would like to request help with the slide. If you could please share on the screen so that everyone can see. Or let me see if I can share myself. Just a second. Let me see if I'm able to share. You know what, Wumi, if you can just please go ahead and share from your end, and I will try to keep pace.
All right, I'll do that now.
All right, thank you.
Meanwhile, while we're waiting for that, your voice is finer than my own, Tony. So I'll just bow down and not put mouth inside. Always great to have you, Tony.
My pleasure.
I hear you said it, my pleasure. I'm gonna have to go and learn this thing.
Beside keep me.
Thank you, Tony.
Please forgive us as we try to put the presentation on the screen so that we can all follow. Okay. Thank you very much, Wumi. So let's start the class. As Justin already introduced, my name is Tony Usidamen, and I will be talking to you about the subject democracy and citizen participation. It's actually a discussion because I'm no expert on this topic. I'm a student like you, And I am hoping that this session will not just be one-sided. If you have questions and comments, please note them at the end of the presentation. We will have the opportunity to engage on this topic. And if at any point you would like to call my attention to something, please feel free to drop a comment in the chat box and I will take a look at it. So our topic today, democracy and citizen participation. In the outline, we'll be starting off looking at the different forms of government that we have. We'll talk briefly about anarchism, autocracy, oligarchy, and of course, the major subject, democracy. After that, we would look at democracy in greater detail. We'll look at the variants of democracy and then the challenges of modern day democracy. And finally, we would look at the various concepts of citizenship, from citizens as users and consumers to citizens as shapers and makers. And then we will highlight a few issues in modern day citizenship and how to build active citizen participation. So that's our outline for today. Now let's start with the different forms of government. First, let's define the word government. In simple terms, government is the body with the power to make and or enforce laws to control a country, a land area, a people, or an organization. I'll take that again. Government is the body with the power to make and or enforce laws to control a country, a land area, a people, or organization. I am taking time to emphasize these different areas when it comes to government, because most times when we think of government, we only usually think about a geographical territory, like, a country, a village, but the word government also applies to other forms of social organization, including businesses. That is why in the corporate world, you would hear a terminology like corporate governance, because even in the corporate world, and even in, our social gatherings, our village meetings, our club meetings, there is still a form of government in those places. So anybody that has the power to make and enforce laws on behalf of a country, a land area, a people, or an organization is defined as a government. And most societies agree that the existence of government for the proper functioning of that society is morally justified. Now, let us look at the various types of government that we have. The first that I would want us to look at is called anarchism. And anarchism simply means rule by none. Now, technically speaking, it is impossible to have a situation where there is no form of leadership or rulership, technically speaking. However, in practice, as we would see later on during this discussion, we would see that conditions that seem like there is no head appear even in other systems of government. So for academic purposes, think of anarchism as rule by none. That's a society without a publicly enforced government or political authority. Now let's look at the next one, which is autocracy. Autocracy simply means rule by one. It's a system of government where power or supreme power rests in the hands of one person or polity, whose decisions are subject to neither external legal restraints nor regularized mechanisms of popular control, except in the cases of a coup d'etat or mass insurrection. So autocracy basically is a system where only one person holds the power to make and enforce laws in a geographical territory or society. And we see that in absolute monarchies in countries such as Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Brunei, and then dictatorships like in places like North Korea. Those are examples of modern day forms of autocracy. Okay, so let's look at the next popular form of government, which is oligarchy. And oligarchy simply means, following the trend of the other two we've looked at. Remember, anarchism is ruled by none. Autocracy is ruled by one, while oligarchy is ruled by a few. It's a system of government where power is concentrated with a small number of people who are distinguished by several different factors. Under oligarchy, there is the aristocracy, which is ruled by the nobility, the people of noble birth. It's a society ruled by noble birth. It's a situation where only people who are born to a noble family are making laws on behalf of the people. That's what aristocracy stands for. Aristocracy is a form of oligarchic government. Another form of oligarchic government is plutocracy. And plutocracy simply means rule by the elites, by the wealthy. It's a system whereby those who have amassed wealth, influence through wealth, are the ones calling the shots in a society. And like I said, just like we have conditions that appear like anarchism, even autocracy, we see some forms of plutocracy in other forms of government, like the democratic form of government, which we would explore in a bit. Also, another form of oligarchic government is the meritocracy. And meritocracy simply means rule by the meritorious. By meritorious, I mean those who are gifted in different sectors. For instance, the engineers amongst us are in charge of building and engineering projects and things like that. The counselors, philosophers amongst us are in charge of social welfare and things like that. So meritocracy is simply when people with a particular skill are given the reins over a people in that particular area. So that is meritocracy as a form of oligarchic government. And then we have what is called theocracy. Technically, theocracy means rule by God, but we all know that God will not come and rule by himself. So it is essentially a situation where power is exercised by the religious elite. And the country of Iran has many aspects of a theocratic state. So these are the different forms of oligarchic governments that we have. Even for theocracy, there are words associated with it, words like authoritarianism, which is a monopoly of political power by an individual or small group that otherwise allows people to go about their lives as they wish. Another word closely associated with that is totalitarianism, which is ruled by an elite that exercises unlimited power over the people in a state, over all aspects of the lives of the people in a state. So these are the more popular forms of government that we have. Anarchism, autocracy, oligarchy, which leaves us with what we are essentially talking about today, which is democracy. And democracy, following the same trend as the others, is ruled by the majority. A more common definition that most of us will be familiar with is the definition of democracy as a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We will see that even in democratic governments, there are also different forms of expression. Let's go to our next slide and explore the concepts of democracy some more. Now, if I asked the people in this class to tell me what they think democracy is, we're likely to find these definitions or descriptions: that democracy is a government of the people, that democracy is the will of the majority, that democracy is competition for political power, it is the right to voice your opinions, it is freedom to be part of any organization or group. Democracy means equality, rights, and representation. It is free market, it is citizen action. And when you talk about democracy, you're talking the power to elect your representatives. So these are, various descriptions of the word or understanding of the word democracy. We will now look at it in greater detail to see how it started and how it has evolved in practice over the years. Now, in terms of the etymology, democracy, like we said before, is ruled by the people. And by the people, we mean majority of the people. The term is derived from the Greek word demokratia. Demokratia is coined from two words. The first being demos, that means people, and kratos, meaning rule. So if you join those words, it is rule by the people. And it was thought to have started, that's the coinage of the word, the expression democracy was thought to have started in the middle of the 5th century. However, evidence suggests that various forms of democratic government already existed well before the turn of the 5th century. Scholars say that democracy was the natural system of government among the non-literate tribal societies. That is, during those thousands of years when people basically survived by hunting and gathering. At that time, there were already forms of democratic government. The people had already organized themselves into democratic settings with elected leaders taking charge of the affairs of the state. However, greater inequalities in wealth and military powers between communities sort of caused a change in how communities represented themselves or how they were led, such that those people or those communities that had greater wealth, that could accumulate more in terms of wealth and resources. And resources usually would translate into purchasing power and military power. So those with greater wealth, meaning greater military power, were able to exert dominance over those communities that were smaller. So that structure, that form of democratic governance that initially existed, now was replaced by more authoritarian forms of government, because people with wealth and power thought that they could just go into communities and just ransack the place, burn the places down, and hoist their flags there and make it part of their own territory. That was how empires started to build, extend beyond their own geographical area, because they had the might, they had the money, they had the might, and then they exerted dominance and influence over other areas. So from the democratic system of government, which we said existed in the non-literate tribal societies, authoritarianism gained popularity. And then after that, more people settled for the oligarchic system of government, in which monarchies or monarchs and aristocrats led the people. So popular governments amongst people vanished at some point because of these inequalities that I talked about in wealth and military powers, and it was replaced for thousands of years by the oligarchic government. And then around 500 BC, conditions that would permit the resurgence of democratic governments appeared in several places. And the primitive democracy that we talked about earlier was reinvented in more advanced forms. And the most significant developments in this regard occurred in Greece and Rome. And since that time, democracy seems to be the more favored system of government. Whether it is the right system of government for all societies is another discussion altogether. Let's carry on to the next slide. So as we said, democracy encompasses social, economic, and cultural conditions that enable free and equal practice of political self-determination. And there are several variants of democracy. The more popular are the direct or participatory democracy and the representative or indirect democracy. The direct democracy is a form of government where the citizen makes legislative decisions by themselves instead of delegating the power to elected representatives. This is considered to be the purest form of democracy because the people themselves are involved in making decisions about different aspects of their collective life. And referendums and petitions in which all voters can participate are examples of direct democracy. More recently, we would remember the Scottish referendum, where the people of Scotland in 2014 voted whether to remain a part of the United Kingdom or to become a separate, to exclude themselves from, being part of the United Kingdom. And 55% of Scottish people voted to stay, while 45% voted to leave, which is why Scotland till today remains a part of the United Kingdom. This was as a result of the Scottish referendum of 2014, where the people themselves voted to remain. Another example is the British referendum, that's the Brexit, more popularly called Brexit, where the people of Britain voted whether to remain a part of the European Union or to go their way, which was in 2016. 52% voted to leave, while 48% of the people of Great Britain and the United Kingdom voted to stay, which is why today Britain or the United Kingdom is no longer a part of the EU. That is why if you're going to apply for visas, when they talk of Schengen states, it is all the other European countries minus the United Kingdom. If you want to go to Britain, if you want to go to Scotland, you would need to get visas, permits issued by those countries. You're not covered by the Schengen visa that you would, at a time was sufficient to visit any part of the European Union. So that, or these, are examples of the direct or participatory democracy, where the people in the minutest of issues have a say and they decide on how their affairs should be run through referendums and petition. Again, it is thought to be the purest form of democracy that there is. Now, the other more popular variant of democracy is the representative or indirect democracy. And it's a form of government in which legislation is enacted by representatives that are elected by the people themselves, in contrast to what we just looked at, the direct or participatory democracy. The majority of the people, the majority delegate power to a minority to act on their behalf. So the minority is mandated to do this in response to the majority's express wishes according to the representative's own judgment. So a few people elected by the majority of the people are trusted to make decisions about all issues, including distribution of wealth, including how their affairs should be run generally. That is the representative or indirect form of democracy. There are other closely associated terms when we talk of variants of democracy. There's what is called liberal democracy, there's social democracy, there's popular democracy, but they are still, in a way, related to these two broad categories that we just looked at. Now, let us talk about the comparative advantage of democracy vis-a-vis the other forms of government that are there. Generally, no association could maintain a democratic government for as long as democratic governments have existed without the people believing that it is the best compared to other forms of government. Meaning that if most of the countries, right now there are about 195 recognized countries, 193 member states of the UN, and then the Vatican City and the state of Palestine. This make up the 195 recognized countries. Out of this 195, 120, which is 58.2%, currently practice democracy. Now, all of these countries wouldn't if they thought that, or most of these countries wouldn't if they thought that another system of government was better than democracy. Now, let us look at the comparative advantage. So in theory, states with democratic governments are thought to prevent rule by autocrats, meaning that if, as we said, democracy is the rule by the majority, meaning majority have a say in deciding who rules them and in how the affairs of the states are run. Conditions like that in theory, would prevent the possibility of one person or a few people taking the reins and exacting influence and control over a state. Remember that I said in theory, right? So democracy is thought to prevent the rule by autocrats. It is thought to guarantee fundamental individual rights. That's in comparison with other forms of government like autocracy and oligarchy. Of course, if you have a system of government where one person is the deciding, on the lives of everybody, you would expect that in that kind of place, it would be more difficult to guarantee individual self-expression and individual rights. So comparatively, democracy is thought to be better in guaranteeing fundamental human rights. It's thought that democracy would allow for relatively high level of political equality. It's thought that democracy, in comparison, would foster better human development, especially when you look at the indices such as health, education, justice system, social welfare, security, and the likes, in comparison to other systems of government. And finally, one of the comparative advantage of democracy is that it is more likely to ensure greater equality or fairness in sharing the wealth of the people. Again, like I said, this is technically speaking. In practice, it may not be as it has been said or as it is thought, and we'll explore that a bit shortly. So, what are the challenges of democratic governance? Like all other dominant forms of governance, actual governance within a democracy can be influenced by sectors with political power which are not part of the formal government. For instance, in many countries where democracy exists today, we know that it is the people who are the wealthiest, the most influential, that determine who the elected public officials are. That is why you see corporations, powerful corporations donating money, like large monies, to election. Just look at the last American election, for instance, and how much the current presidential candidate raised from corporate America. The richest man in the world, for instance, was one of his major benefactors in the last election. And we all know that the way democratic governments or elections are structured, money plays a vital role in campaigning for votes and in trying to sway people to go with a particular candidate. And so, even though democracy technically is supposed to be the fairest, we just looked at all of the what is thought to be the advantages of a democratic system of government. Even if it is supposed to be the fairest, we see that it is also influenced by actors outside the political structures, like in the case that I just cited, corporate organizations or wealthy individuals who are like the puppeteers dictating how the game should be played. So democracy, although like I said, is adopted by 120 out of the 195 recognized countries, although it is thought to be the best in terms of freedoms and equal rights and prosperity for all, it is still influenced in very, very, very significant ways by other forms of government, like the wealthy, the plutocracy, like we talked about earlier. I did also mention that when I was describing the autocratic system of government, that technically there is no place where, sorry, the anarchism. When I was talking about anarchism, I was saying technically there's no place without a system of government. But we have all experienced, even within our own country, that is said to be a democracy or that professes to be a democracy. We have seen cases where it seemed like there was no form of leadership at all. If you remember those days, the Yaradua era, when, you know, there was a short period of time where no one was sure whether he was alive or not. It would appear that he had actually passed on, but certain people around the government didn't want that information to become public knowledge until Dora Akiyuli, I think it was, you know, started making noise about the fact that this may have happened. So for a while, it seemed like Nigeria was a rudderless country without anyone at the helm. And how many times in the last few years has it felt like that? Even under the Buhari regime, would remember there was a time when he was ill and people weren't really sure as to whether he was alive or whether he was not. So those kinds of periods in our political history, and, you know, even sometimes, as we see in, you know, different times before now, those times can be described as the anarchist system of government, a situation where it seems like no one was in charge of the country, in comparison to authoritarianism or autocratic system of government. We would see in democracies like Rwanda, where I'm not even sure we can say that what they have there is actually a democracy, where a man, despite his best intentions, despite all the good that he has been able to achieve in terms of development, looking at, you know, various indices for developing states in the country of Rwanda, you can't really say that what is practiced there is a democracy, because this man would not allow opposition or dissidents to have a voice in the running of the states. Very many times we've seen people who opposed either been outrightly killed or thrown into jail. We've seen such. And there are many democracies around the world, there are many countries that claim to practice democracy around the world, where we still see this type of, you know, high-handedness, and, if you may, the tendency to be dictators, you know, even inside of a democracy. We see that in some way in what is playing out in this country, where it seems like the executive has undue power without the usual checks and balance that will be provided by the legislative and the judiciary, the judicial arm of government. So if you say a country is practicing a democracy and the judiciary and the legislature are weakened or non-existent, in technical terms, what you're really practicing is no longer a democracy. Even though you have representatives, even though the people vote, what you're practicing is actually a dictatorship, which is an autocratic system of government. A lot of people are looking at what is happening in America today. America is supposed to be the model democratic country, but a lot of the things that are happening right now under the current government appear to be, you know, dictatorial or autocratic in nature. So yes, democracy is embraced by most of the countries in the world because it is thought to guarantee more advantages for the generality of the people, but it is not without its challenges, and it is influenced by other systems of government. Okay, so now let's look at citizenship. which is the second part of the coin. Democracy is one part, and citizenship is the second side of the coin. It was a Latin American activist who said citizenship is very tied to the idea of democracy. Democracy is the first name, and citizenship is like this, the surname, the last name. And I agree, and we'll see why. As a concept, the word citizenship started to gain a lot of traction around the 18th century. And at the time, the understanding of civil citizenship was shaped by rights and responsibilities being defined by the government. So citizenship at the inception of the word was understood to be government defining for the people what their roles should be within a society, meaning that the people themselves were not in a position to decide things for themselves. A model citizen was one who displayed absolute trust in the government of the day and obeyed whatever the government asked him or her to do. And the belief was that common people were not in a position to determine for themselves. They lacked sufficient knowledge and judgment to solve their own problems. Therefore, they needed to rely on the elected public officials. So this is the earliest concept of citizens as users or consumers. Users or consumers in the sense that their place within society is not due to any rights that they naturally hold, but those rights are conferred on them by the government. The government determines or defines what a citizen should do, and the role of a citizen is not to question, but to trust the government and just simply obey. So this was the initial concept of citizenship. Citizens as users and consumers. Next slide. However, advocates say the problem is not that the people are not able to make decisions by themselves or that they are distracted by the consumer economy. The problem is the continued concentration of power in the hands of a few people. The belief is that the more people get involved in decisions that affect them, governments would improve and the people's quality of life will be better. So advocates began to say, no, citizens can't just be people without any kind of bearing in how things are done. Citizens have to have a say in how things are done, because the more people are involved, the better the government is run and the better the quality of lives of the people generally. And this was captured very well in this quote by the Institute of Development Studies, UK. It says, new approaches to social citizenship seek to move beyond seeing the state as bestowing rights and demanding responsibilities of its subjects, as we just looked at, citizens as users and consumers. In doing so, they aim to bridge the gap between citizen and the state by recasting citizenship as practiced rather than given. Remember earlier assumption or of the role of citizens was as consumers, as users. They didn't have a say. The government decided for them. But new approaches or more modern approaches, more recent approaches say, no, citizens should be recognized as people who have the power, not that the power is defined by just a few people in elective positions, but it's a fundamental power that they have as people in a state. And so it recognizes the agency of citizens as makers and shapers rather than as users and consumers. I hope we can appreciate, the evolution of the term citizenships. When it initially started, the role of citizens was only defined by the government. Citizens didn't have much of a say, but today, the office of the citizen is a very, very important office, meaning that citizens in democracies around the world today wield more power than they did before. Now, just like there are challenges in the practice of democracy, there are also challenges or issues in modern day citizenship, and we'll look at a few of them now. Remember that, as we said, one of the reasons why democracy is thought to be the best, system of government. And again, I say this for academic purposes. The debate is open as to whether democracy is the best system of government for all countries. I personally do not think that democracy as it is practiced now is ideal for all countries. I believe that a people should be able to develop models of governance that work best for them instead of adopting systems that other people have created, given their own peculiar circumstances, and not looking at your own peculiar situation, culture, tradition, and, a lot of the other issues. I believe, and this is not arguing for or against democracy. This is just saying, instead of adopting, only because this is what other people are doing, countries or people should actually be free to look at what works for them and guide themselves or their affairs in the way that they deem best for the collective good. In any case, modern day conception of citizenship is grounded on the notions of equality and universality. This is, linked to democracy, like we said, two sides of a coin. Democracy is thought to guarantee greater equality, and it's thought to be a more representative form of government, so universality. However, there are tensions in theory as well as in practice, just as we saw with democracy itself. Now, the first issue is the individual identity versus the collective identity. In this class alone, let me quickly take a look at some of the names we have. We have Tiamiyu, we have Owolabi. Already, I know that Tiamiyu Taufik, going by the name, forgive me if I am wrong, is likely, maybe because of the Taufik in the name, is likely to be a Yoruba Muslim. Oluwole Okegbola is Yoruba, but Oluwole Okegbola, even though he's Yoruba, is from Abga. Meanwhile, Tiamiyu Taufik Akiwumi, even though he's Yoruba, is APC. And then in this same class, we have Gabriel Ekwere, who is NNPP. We have Buhari Issa, who is from the northern extraction from the name, is of NNPP. Meanwhile, Gabriel Ekwere is not of the northern extraction, but is also of NNPP. I don't know if you're seeing what I'm trying to point out. Even amongst us in this class, we have Yorubas, we have Igbos, we have Hausas, we have Kanuris, we have Edos, we have, several tribes amongst us here. And even amongst the people who are Edo, we have the ones who are Christians, we have the ones who are Muslims, we have the ones who don't even believe in any of these religions. We have the ones who are African traditional religion adherents or practitioners. We also have males amongst us, we have females. And we all know that these different identities have peculiar challenges. So the people of Northern extraction have peculiar cultures and challenges. The people of Southern extraction have peculiar challenges as well. The women have peculiar challenges. The men have peculiar challenges. The Christian have their own way of life. The Muslims have their own way of life. And then for academic purposes, there's also the sexuality issue. Today, they are touting LGBTQ and different plus that never seems to end. The point I am making is, even amongst us as a people here in this class, we have different things that distinguish us. Now, if democracy is supposed to ensure equality and universality, how can we, in the process of ensuring that the rights of Buhari Issa, who is of the NNPP, is protected, how can we, in trying to ensure that Buhari's rights are protected, not step on the rights of Nicholas Keke, who is a PDP person? You know, I'm looking for a female name, so it's not like I'm just mentioning the men. You know, please, the women, I am not ignoring you. I'm not just seeing any name that jumps to me as a female name. I'm seeing more of the male names. But I mean, okay, I see Aishat. Yes, I see Aguloye Aishat of Abga. I believe that's a female name. I see Owe Elizabeth Abga as well. I mean, this is another example. Aguloye Aishat is likely Yoruba from the name, but she belongs to Abga. So how can I ensure that Aguloye, a female person who is from the Yoruba tribe, and Abga, her rights are protected and not infringe on the rights of Owe Elizabeth Ihe Sheikh, likely from where I'm from, around the south, either Edo, Delta, Rivers, around that area, who is of the Abga party, in ensuring that I protect her right as you know, a south person of Abga party. How will I ensure that I am not impeding on the rights of Aguloye Aishat, who is from the southwest and of Abga? So those are really serious issues. And I would like to give one example that I think all of us would remember. This was in the United States, just to buttress what I'm trying to say about how difficult it is, even within a democratic setting where it is supposed to be about equality and universality, how in advocating the right of one particular person who has different expressions, one person, Yoruba, female, Christian, Abga, and you know, all of the other things that we can look at, their sexual preference and all of that, and their age and all of that. How can we ensure that in protecting or advancing the rights of one person, we do not infringe on the rights of another person? The example I like to use when I give this class is of that baker in the United States. Some of you will remember the owner of a cake shop in Colorado, United States. She had been approached by a couple who were same-sex, a same-sex couple. And this cake person is a Christian cake person. And she, from her Christian view, didn't feel good about baking cakes for people who were in a same-sex, who were going to be in a same-sex marriage. She felt that because of her professed Christianity, doing that would go against the dictates of her religion. Now, the argument is, does she have a right as a Christian person to deny some other people a service? Remember that she has a right to choose her religion under the Constitution. She has a right to practice whatever religion that she deems, okay for her. But in practicing her religion, is she in any way infringing? In practicing her right to a religion, is she in any way infringing on the right of those couples who also have a right to services by being members of a society? So this generated a lot of debate, and I think the matter eventually went to the Supreme Court, and I think it ruled in favor of the cake baker, that she had the right to practice her religion and to choose if in providing a service for people who were not, practicing the same religion, in providing that service to them, if she was going against our own rights to express herself as a Christian person. So I'm just trying through this example to point out that even though in citizenship, we're supposed to be talking about equality and universality, universality meaning that the rights of most people are covered. In practice, there are still lots of debates which make practice actually very, 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 very difficult. And I hope that we appreciate the point that I'm trying to bring up. This is not a question of right or wrong. I don't believe in absolutes. This is for debate so that we can think about these issues and not just look through one lens. We can look at, all the other possible ways to look at these issues. Citizenship or democracy should guarantee the rights of the majority of the people. But in guaranteeing the rights of one person that has different forms of expression, how do I ensure that I am not infringing on the rights of the other person? Okay, so this is just one of the issues. Let's look at the second one, which is private life versus public life. Now, the best example I can give of this, of the variance between, or the disconnect between private life and public life when it comes to citizenship, is the example of the senator from Adamawa. There was a senator who was one of the young senators at the time called Senator Abo, if I remember correctly, from Adamawa State. This senator, probably on the floor of the House when he was a member, would go and, speak for women. I am pro-women. And, would give eloquent speeches about how the rights of women should be protected and everything. And then this same senator was reported to have gone to some adult store and malhandled two ladies inside of that store. In fact, more recently, there was a lawmaker from one of the eastern states who had similar issues with, I think it was one of the ride-hailing services, either Uber or Bolt, who had threatened, while being recorded, that he would make this Uber driver disappear for whatever reason. When this became, a big issue, his friends or people who knew him brought out, started writing, I call it PR, like reputation repair, and started writing about how this person has always been pro-people, pro-poor, pro-this. This is to show us the disconnect between private life in professing to be citizens or good citizens and public life. If our private life and what we do in public is at dissonance, then are we actually practicing good citizenship, responsible citizenship, the way it should be? Now, let's even leave the politicians. Let's look at us in our everyday life. I know of a family. Two of their kids, this family, the father and the mother were the father of the guy and the mother of the lady were both good friends in church. They were both in what is called they were workers in church. The church wardens, people who go to Catholic church, they call them church wardens, ushers, what other churches called ushers, like they were workers. And they were friends, very respectful and everything. One was Igbo, the man was Igbo, the woman was Yoruba. When their children fell in love and were considering being married, both parties refused vehemently because no, how can my Igbo son marry a Yoruba woman? How can my Yoruba daughter marry an Igbo man? Right? And I'm not making this example up. This is actually a true story. People who respected each other, I'm talking of their parents, who were friends, who will talk about how we are all one and, all of us are the same in the eyes of God. When it came down to their children being joined in marriage, all of those things that they professed in public while they were serving as ushers or church wardens or whatever role it is that they were playing, whatever you know it by, all of those things are professed in public are now suddenly at variance with their private life. In private, they're no longer agreed because no, over my dead body will my Igbo son marry a Yoruba woman. And we see that in many other cultures, right? There are several other examples that we can look at. Even in our workplaces, how many times are people in a position of authority making decisions to hire instead of on merit? How many times do we make those decisions? Do they make those decisions because this person is from my religion, this person is from my tribe, this person is a man, this person is a woman? How many times do we see that happen? So even though we say that democracy, citizenship is about equality, is about respecting everybody's rights, what we do in private and what we do in public do not align. So these are some of the issues in modern day citizenship. You see a man, a model person, a reader in church, or even a pastor in church. He volunteers at his children's PTA meeting, is involved in, the running of the estates, their estates association, is one of the ESCOs, very well liked man, very soft spoken, very respectful, very kind. How many times have we seen this same supposed public models in private? They are wife beaters. They do not take care of their children. How many times have we seen these happen? So when we talk about, democracy being, or citizenship being about guaranteeing the rights of everyone or most of the people within a society, we must be able to marry what we do in private and what we do in public. So I hope we can appreciate all of these different issues in modern day citizenship. Let's move on to the next slide. Societal context also matters when we talk about citizenship. In a country like South Africa that has been through years of apartheid, a good citizen is said to be one that actively fights racism. I mean, if you had asked if you had asked the South Africans then, you know, especially at the height of the apartheid, who is a good citizen? The first thing that will come to you is, oh, somebody who actively fights racism. That is how societal context affects how people view citizenship. In a country like Russia, for instance, individual self-reliance is valued over collective action because of the fact that they practice or they promote economic liberalism in that kind of country. So a citizen is one who, you know, strives for individual self-reliance. That is a good citizen in a country like that. And then in countries that have been through many years of wars and conflicts, think of the Sudans of this world, the Irans of this world, and, you know, many regions in, you know, Palestine, the Middle East, those war-torn countries, some parts of Kenya too, even in Nigeria. Let's not look too far. We see the situations between herders and farmers in the north. We see all of the Umuleri, Aguleri wars, you know, the southern Kaduna killings between Christians, Muslims, all of these conflicts in countries that, you know, have these issues. Good citizens or model citizens are seen to be those that seek peaceful resolutions and reconciliation. So, what makes a good citizen? Very importantly, being informed and aware of social, economic, and political issues. Now, it is very, very good to know about all of the trending issues in entertainment. It is very good. I have nothing against it. The newest Davido track, the latest beef between Davido and Wizkid, Burna Boy's latest girlfriend, the next edition of Big Brother, who will win the Ballon d'Or, whether Vinicius Jr. was robbed or not. You know, all of the issues in entertainment, it is all well and good to know about all of these things. But a model citizen should also make it a point of duty to be informed about political happenings around them. So by all means, watch Telemundo, watch Z World, watch Africa Magic, watch K-drama, watch football, watch, you know, all of the dramas, all the documentaries, read all the books, all the things that you love to do, but make it a point of duty to also be informed about happenings around your place. Now, if I asked a lot of us now, if we knew the name of our LCDA chairman, genuinely or honestly, how many of us here in class, there are about 158 people in class right now. How many of us, 158, actually, honestly, know the name of our LCDA chairman? How many of us even know where the secretariat is, right? I'm not saying everybody should be involved in politics, but at least be aware of the issues. Know who your elected representatives are. Even if you're not, you know, an active politician, we all don't have to be active politicians, but keep abreast of the issues. You know, keep abreast of the issues. It is very, very important. It is one of the important responsibilities or signs of a good citizen. A good citizen should foster tolerance and respect for human rights in all relationships and institutions mediating conflict. You can't claim to be a good citizen, and then when certain people in society are being disrespected or abused or marginalized, you are hailing their oppressors. You can't be a good citizen and be championing, be mounting championing equality when where you are in your domain or amongst you and your friends, when you are sitting down to drink, or where you are at the salon to, make your hair, do your nails, the discussions you are having, you are putting another group of people down. You can't say that you are a good citizen. A good citizen should foster tolerance and respect for human rights in all relationships, wherever you are, within your own sphere of influence. Related to this, you should be concerned about taking steps to combat disadvantage and injustice. I will talk about, an example that I give every time. All of us have influence. We don't all have to be politicians to have some form of influence. Your influence might be amongst your friends, your drinking buddies, might be around the girls that you hang out together, might be around the guys that you watch football together, might be around the people at your workplace, the people in your church group, might be in your family. All of us exert some level of influence, right? Wherever we are, it is our duty as citizens to ensure that injustice and disadvantage, we combat them where we see them. I was going to say one of the examples I use is a popular blogger, Tunde Ednot, who has massive following. A lot of us know him on Instagram. There was a time, I don't know if he still does it, when he would do the, what you call it, the smash or pass. He would put, images of women, and he would ask the men, are you, what he was implying is, would you, have intimate relations with this person or not? Therefore, objectifying the women. And sometimes he would also put up photos of men objectifying the men. Now, people with platforms like that, people of influence, wouldn't it be just amazing if, rather than perpetuating actions that put a particular gender or sex or project them in a bad light, wouldn't it be just great if we use those platforms to talk about the ills in society and create greater awareness? Sometimes comedians go and they crack jokes. You see a comedian cracking a joke about people who have physical challenges. You see them trying to mock maybe people who are challenged with a condition like Down syndrome and all of that. And to them, they are joking. And we're all sitting there laughing at the funny faces they are making. Have we thought about how that their attempt at cracking joke is affecting those communities of people that these jokes are about? Whether it is, people with Down syndrome, whether it is blind people, whether it is the people who have some form of deformity or impediment or whatever, right? As a good citizen, it should be our duty to ensure that within our own sphere, when we see those things happening, we shut it down. Sometimes my friends send things to me on Instagram, on Facebook, and those things are against the values that I hold there. Immediately I say, please don't ever send this kind of thing to me again. I remember there was a time when, this Balthazar, some guy in Equatorial Guinea, was trending. There were people begging openly, men and women, begging for people to share videos of people having sex with them. Have you asked yourself, if it was your sister or your brother that was in those videos, would you be gleefully begging and sharing those videos? Why are you so interested in what other people do in private? Why are you interested and begging for it, right? So within our own sphere of influence, we do not have to be politicians. We don't have to be political office holders. Wherever we are, we can stand for the right things. We can, when our friends are cracking jokes that bring people down and say, guy, I beg, no, they talk like that. That's the way they talk, no good. We shouldn't just laugh things off, because when we do nothing or when we laugh things off, we are emboldening or perpetuating all of these actions that are detrimental to certain segments of society. And that's not what good citizens should be doing. I'll run quickly through the rest because they are linked. Good citizens should participate in, community, national affairs, engage in public debates, like all those debates about whether the Senate action against Natasha was right or wrong. Without taking sides right now or anything like that, lending a voice to those debates and being open, we can learn a lot, and we can either clarify, things that we did not get clarity on, things we didn't know, or we can also, because of the clarity that we have, change our views with the benefit of superior knowledge. But if we do not join in those debates, whether, in our small groups or in chat boxes and all of that, there's no way we can bring about change. If we do not contribute to this discourse, there's no way we can bring about change. And there's no way we can also grow and change because we're not learning from other people, right? And this last point I'm going to make, because it's hard, especially for us as Nigerians. I know different countries are experiencing their own challenges. I can't speak for them. I can speak for myself as a Nigerian. I know that Nigeria makes it so hard for somebody to be patriotic in this country. It seems like you turn left, you turn right, everything against this country seems to be working against you. However, I want to plead with you for there to be any chance of a change. And whether that change is starting with a small step that you make in your own small sphere of influence or a bigger change, there has to be a shred, even if the tiniest, of hope. If you do not genuinely believe that things can change, how then can you act in a way that can make things change? If all of us resign and say Nigeria is a hopeless situation because the candidate I voted for in the last election did not win, or because, despite, my vote, this is happening, that is, and all of us resign, how then would there ever be change? So I am tasking all of us. I know that Nigeria is a very difficult country. We have our challenges and all, but please let us not lose hope completely, because that hope, that small shred of hope that we hope to, that is what would guide us and make us take the necessary steps that will cause the change. The change might not happen immediately, but if all of us take small steps wherever we are, I keep saying within our own sphere of influence, because we all have influence. If we take small steps, eventually we will begin to see the kind of change that we want. It may not happen now. It may not happen in the next 5 years. It may not happen in 10 years, but it may happen in the lifetime of your child if it doesn't happen in your lifetime. And don't think that those small actions you're taking are useless. No, they are not. They may not be, the results may not be clear or visible now, but trust me, nothing you do that is towards ensuring a just and fair society is ever wasted. Nothing, not your vote. Eventually, those actions will add up and it will bring about the desired change that we all want to see. Building active citizen advocacy, it's important to build public interest within our sphere of influence. I already said that. Let's start developing knowledge and critical consciousness to resist dominant values. Let's promote civic education and advocacy training. What we're doing here is very, very important. I remember when we're in school, in primary school, citizenship was a major part of our curriculum. It shouldn't only be in primary school curriculum. Also, citizenship education should be taught in churches and also in places of work, because citizenship is not just something reserved for a specific group of people. We are all living within a societal context and we all have roles. So everybody should have citizenship, civic education and advocacy training, which is why what the Electoral College is doing through these courses and classes is very, very important. And we should pursue broad-based citizen action. So organizations like Electoral College that are canvassing for good governance should look for other organizations that share similar interest, lend our voices to discuss, because if we unite on issues that we care about and together highlight those issues, the chances of being heard are better. Okay? In conclusion, advocacy that is geared to building citizenship and reshaping political culture draws heavily on the theory and practice of participation and popular education. A new practice of citizen leadership requires an integrated strategy involving participatory education processes to build people's ability to analyze their reality and internalize their rights as citizens. It also takes new alliances and broad-based democratic organizations that tap the power of working together, as well as respecting and using people's differences. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. That is the end of our class today. My presentation, not the end of the class. I know that we are in the Ramadan period. Our Muslim brothers and sisters who are fasting, Ramadan Mubarak to you. Very soon they would need to break their fast. So I've been told that the class needs to end shortly, but I don't know from Wumi or Justin if we have time for one question or remark before we end the class. Over to you, Justin, Wumi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tony. It was a wonderful presentation. And like you rightly mentioned, we just have a few minutes before we can wrap it up eventually. Students, you've heard it all from him. Just one or two questions because of our time. By 6:30, we'll have just 5 minutes, and go straight to the point if you are given the opportunity to ask a question. And so with that, I will unmute Shoyeye Oladipo. Can you ask your question, please?
Okay,
Oladipo.
hello?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, can you hear me, please?
Fast.
Yes,
yes.
I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really appreciate your submission, the way you have been analyzing it ever since why. But I have a kind of question, and which is, I, in my own opinion, observed that we have a very complex tribe setups in Nigeria. Like if we start counting the tribes in Nigeria, we count over 100, I think 250, whatever. If I know 50 something, if I could get it right, but I'm not so sure. Now, this is a kind of complex idea because at the end of the day, you have a kind of, this is my tribesman, regardless of his ideology, regardless of his what he has to offer. Is my tribesman, I have to support it, support him or her. At the end of the day, we hand ourselves up in the hand of wrong people. Now, I compare Nigeria tribe setup to other countries whereby they have about 2 tribes or even some have 1. And these countries are doing well. If you look at great countries in the world today, you realize that they have minimum number of tribes and they are doing very well. Think of Singapore, Netherlands, Sweden. They don't have much complex tribe like we have in Nigeria. What do you think we can do to this kind of issue? As in tribe issue is a major problem we have in Nigeria, if I could say. Yes, thank you. That's just my simple question.
Okay, let me respond to that quickly, Oladipo. The truth is, I do not know the answer to that question. It's something something that is quite complex, like you say. But our differences really shouldn't be a disadvantage. Our differences should be an advantage, right? We should teach ourselves to, and our children, to look beyond tribal, ethnic affiliation and look at the greater goal of the people. And if our people deem that being together as a country the way we are isn't like the best way for us to ensure equality, fairness, and progress through legal means, like, a referendum. Remember, many people have been proposing the Sovereign National Conference or the National Confab to determine whether, the different federating units of Nigeria or the different tribes in the country still want to remain as one. I think that is a very, very important conversation that should be had. And I think that, I don't know why our leaders are scared of, calling for that confab, but I think for the progress of society, as we have seen in other countries, it is important for the people to determine for themselves if they want to stay together. But this should only be done through legal means. But until that happens, each and every one of us should learn to look at development issues or issues that affect us, not from the lens of our tribe or our religion or our, ethnic groups or gender. Let us look at it from the point of view of humans or people and promote actions, discuss and actions that would guarantee that the rights of the majority of us are protected, and actions that will guarantee greater prosperity for all of us, not actions that will further cause division and misuse or depletion of our commonwealth. We have very limited time. We can't answer everything. Oladipupo, this is a very interesting discussion. Unfortunately, I can't go on talking about it. Again, like I also said, I don't have a monopoly of knowledge. I'm also willing to learn about this so we can continue this conversation on other platforms. Yes, so let's take, Justin, can we take another question? Do we have time for another question?
It's 6:30 already.
Okay, all right.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tony. I wish that we have enough time so you could actually respond to some of the students' curiosity. But students, here we are. We advise you, the lecture has just ended here, but you can continue this conversation in your groups. And then any concerns you have that are not resolved in terms of questions, you can pass them through your team lead to your team list manager, and then the needful will be done. I assure you, if he requires that Tony send responses in terms of writing to your questions, he will do just that. So thank you, everybody. And with that, we wrap the class. I would want us to unmute and say a word of thank you to our facilitator.
LinkedIn especially, it's Tony Usidamet, same name. And, let's keep this engagement going wherever we can, okay? Thank you, everyone. It's been a great privilege to share with you and also learn, because this is always a learning opportunity for me. Thank you to Electoral College for this opportunity. I wish you all a great evening. To our Muslim brethren, Ramadan Mubarak once again. And to all of us, I wish you a great week ahead. And I apologize, the hands up. I see Igwe, I see Paul, I see Ibrahim. Sorry, we are unable to take those questions. But let's continue elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. God bless you. I truly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tony. It's been a very insightful and interesting lecture. Thank you for always being here to impart from your knowledge to the students. On behalf of the Electoral College, we appreciate your time and knowledge shared. Please, you could kindly end the class. You have the host function. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Have a lovely week ahead.